You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the PR consultant Kevin McKeever and the writer and broadcaster Angela Epstein. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, The Guardian carries the findings of a survey by the NHS's patients watchdog, which discovered that 1 in 7 referrals from GPs is rejected, delayed or lost altogether. Meanwhile, the Daily Mail reports on new polling, which has revealed that the public do not trust the NHS over dementia care. The Times leads on the news that the government and employers will encourage all staff to join a union in a proposed overhaul of workers' rights. The Express leads on an exclusive that reveals grooming gangs can exploit a loophole in child protection to access vulnerable girls. The Metro reports on the pepper spraying incident at Heathrow Airport this morning. 1 arrest has been made, but the search for other suspects continues. The Financial Times hears that the US Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, is set to cut interest rates this week, despite disagreements between board members over the prospects for America's economy. And we are joined tonight by Kevin McKeever and Angela Epstein. Welcome to you both. We're going to start with The Guardian and this GP referral black hole. 1 in 7 people in England who need hospital care are not receiving it because the referral by their GPs gets lost, rejected or delayed. And this is according to the NHS's own patient watchdog.
This is an astonishing story. I mean, we hear repeatedly how difficult it is to be able to actually see a GP. Some GPs only want to do online consultations. You can't get an appointment. The very notion that you get to see a GP, you explain your symptoms, they decide that you need specialist care, and then the referral letter, the critical letter that creates the connection between the GP and the recommended specialist, falls into the abyss. And so people are left not knowing, they're in the dark, they're anxious, they're presuming maybe that because we know the NHS is under the cosh, that's why it's taking so long, when in fact nothing's happening. And I think it plays to a few things. First of all, just fundamental inefficiency and flags up this idea that you can chuck as much money as you like at the NHS. We know it just consumes it. But if structurally it's so inefficient, it doesn't matter how much money you put in it. And this other idea of, you have to really advocate for yourself. And not everybody is in a position to do it. I mean, I'm a mouthy, gobby kind of woman. And, I'm the sort of person that will ring up and say, hang on, I came to see you 2 weeks ago. But, in all seriously, understandably, not everybody's built that way. And if you're labouring under the assumption that nothing's happened because you're just in a queue, meanwhile, you're in a spiral of anxiety, you don't know why your symptoms are occurring, and these symptoms could, of course, be something quite dangerous.
No, absolutely. And also it raises questions about how accurate the NHS waiting list is, because it's probably far longer than we realise or is documented.
Absolutely. And it says 1 in 7 of these appointments or referrals going to a black hole, but also in the story it also says that only 70% of those affected, of those 1 in 7, find out because they chase it up and they inquire. So as you say, some people just leave it. When people are unwell, they're in the care of medical professionals, they just think, well, wait and see. They don't want to challenge, you're right. And I worry that it's the most vulnerable that are the most affected by this. A year when the government's put in record sums into the health service, you're right. Often we've got to look at not what just goes in, but actually the process and what comes out the other end. But if I was those 1 in 7, I'd be very worried.
Yeah. In some cases, referrals that the GP has agreed to make do not even get sent from the surgery to the hospital.
I mean, what is that about?
It's not a physical letter nowadays, is it? I mean, it would be
Everything is virtual. Everything is virtual. I once had a situation where I went into my GP practice and they said, sorry, you have to ring up if you want an appointment. And I said, I'm standing in front of reception. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to sit over there and I'm going to phone you. And I did, because it was so ludicrous. And,
did they answer?
Yeah, well, actually what happened is a doctor suddenly came out from the back and I said, I'm just phoning you. And he recognised the ridiculous nature of the situation and booked me in. But like I say, not everybody is capable of advocating for themselves. And that's why it's such a dangerous
Bring back the good old-fashioned medical receptionist, eh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, they're still there, they're just not answering the phone.
They're not allowed to answer the phone, yeah.
Another health story, front page of the Mail. They're claiming that the public no longer trust the NHS over dementia care in particular, and this is a campaign that they've started to get this looked at more closely because it's the UK's biggest killer, claiming 76,000 lives a year.
Yeah, I mean, the poll finds that only 1 in 4 people are confident that they'd receive good treatment from the health services diagnosed. And you say it's a long-running campaign by the Mail, but I think that taps into a deep anxiety amongst people that many of us now, as we live longer, will suffer from anxiety or will have to deal with it in our family. And I think, it's a deep, deep anxiety that people aren't going to get the care that they need and expect. I think it's right the Mail have picked up this campaign.
Well, also, I mean, it is the UK's biggest killer. We think of the big killers in the heart disease, cancer, all these systemic illnesses, but it claims 76,000 lives each year. And I think, God forbid to be in that situation, but we think of it as a kind of almost static scenario. People are, slowly losing their cognitive abilities. Degrees. But actually, it is Alzheimer's is a fatal condition. And this idea that you cannot trust the NHS. For too long it's an old cliche, but we've treated it like a religion. And we've been so in awe of it, and we're so ready to applaud it when it does something well. But equally, again, it's an efficiency situation.
Should we do a bit of politics now? Let's start with the Times. And this story is about the group that helped Starmer to power. Yeah. They've begun looking for a successor.
Yeah, I mean, this is fascinating. It's from Patrick Maguire. He seems to get all the big stories about Labour at the moment. So we've got to treat it, I assume, with quite a lot of credibility. It's that Labour Together, the group that was run by Morgan McSweeney, now the PM's Chief of Staff, of course, and did all the polling on the Labour membership in order to give Keir Starmer his 10 points to win back in 2020. Has now started apparently doing that polling again amongst the Labour membership, which is notoriously difficult to poll a political party. Not just saying who do you think would perform best at the next election, but also doing some comparisons. So who would be best between Wes Streeting and Angela Rayner, or Ed Miliband and Darren Jones. I think significant, first of all, that Labour Together is doing this, because obviously they know it's going to get out. It's polling the Labour Party membership. It was the Starmer vehicle, but also some of the names are being put out there as well. That does suggest that there's a certain air of inevitability about a change in leadership in the Labour Party. And once you kind of start the firing gun, where does it end? But I think this is pretty significant. It's one thing talking up the prospects in Westminster, but you start getting out into that Labour membership, does it become inevitable?
It started sort of seriously a few weeks ago with Wes Streeting, when he was allegedly on manoeuvres and Downing Street were allegedly briefing against him.
Absolutely, but it's a bit of a funny one, because I think they should call it Labour falling apart, never mind Labour Together. But nobody asked me. I mean, there was some talk about this idea of this dream ticket between Angela Rayner and Wes Streeting, when they represent different flanks of the party. So I don't understand how that works. She's obviously still under the cush over the situation over her tax affairs. There's some suggestion that the HMRC inquiry might clear her. You've got a whole sort of gamut of different people. You've got Ed Miliband, whose credentials are, hello, I was a failed Labour leader, and the idea that he should return.
He has apparently ruled himself out. He said that was he said, I think the quote in the story is that being leader the first time round was the perfect inoculation against going a second.
Well, they've run out of bacon sandwiches. But also, the thing is with Starmer, he's kind of lashed himself to Rachel Reeves. There's a growing clamour for her to step down after this disastrous budget, but one can't go without the other. So, but the one thing I would quickly say about this story is it says respondents to the online questionnaire were offered entry into a £500 cash draw for their responses. So I thought it's all about for the good of the party.
They've been
for the
bribed.
good of the pocket as well.
They've been bribed to
what about an incentives culture, Angela? I thought you'd like that.
Oh, I couldn't possibly come. Not for these prices. Not for these prices.
But some of the other names in the hat, Andy Burnham, we've heard that name before, haven't we? And also, who else did we have here? Darren Jones, Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister.
Well, I think Andy Burnham's an interesting... I mean, I'm just sort of... This is my backyard, so obviously his name jumps out for me. He's the Mayor of Greater Manchester, and he's made many great noises about the fact that he's there for the duration. Manchester, he's a Mancunian, he's there with his open anorak and saying, I'm here to improve the city. And he's done some interesting things with the city, I have to say. So the idea of him parachuting himself into a safe seat, which wouldn't necessarily be in the North West, because his political ambition is there, and he's been playing cat and mouse with the whole dialogue dialogue about will he throw his hat into the ring. But the thing is, he'd probably have quite a good chance, I think, if he was selected.
Do you agree, Kevin?
Well, I think none of these people have put their names forward. These are people that are put on a poll. So, you know, I think Andy Burnham, were he to get a seat, were he to get into Westminster, then he probably would stand a good chance amongst Labour membership. But as would lots of these people, Darren Jones is probably the kind of the least known name outside the Westminster bubble. But certainly the likes of Shabana Mahmood, Wes Streeting, Lucy Powell's name's been mentioned as well. She just won one poll. Why not make it a second? So I think it's, and of course Angela Rayner as well. So
That's astonishing.
It just shows it's that many names mentioned. It shows it's could be pretty wide open, if indeed there is a race.
But the idea of Angela Rayner, 1 minute she's bounced out of, you know, frontline politics because of, like I said, because of her tax affairs, and then is spoken about as a potential leader. It just shows you the circular nature of, or the desperate state of the Labour Party. It's
or maybe
one or
it
the
shows
other.
you can all come back for an innocent mistake.
Oh, you're too much of a romantic.
Yeah, very, very popular, certainly, with the left of the party. And talking of Angela Rayner, she's also being spoken about in the Metro. Starmer says hugely talented Rayner welcome as minister despite flat fiasco. Kevin?
Well, I think what this demonstrates is that it actually, you know, remember Keir Starmer was pretty gushing about Angela when she had to resign, but I think he knows that, you know, it's not just about who might run in a Labour leadership contest, but who and what might trigger it, and whether it's to do with potential union rights, the Employment Rights Bill, whether it's to do with further measures on child poverty. I think it's clear that all the cabinet, but Keir Starmer in particular, are eyeing the power of Angela Rayner and the fact that she could be the one that starts a leadership contest, whether or not she even decides or can run in it. So I think it demonstrates she has a lot of power, despite having, you know, left in pretty difficult circumstances. The Prime Minister recognises their power both in the parliamentary party and in the wider party, and of course with the trade union movement as well.
Andrew, do you think she still wields an awful lot of power?
Well, I mean, her ability to wreck growth and business because of the nature of the contents of the Employment Rights Bill is staggering. I mean, you know, if you're a small business, the things that you may well be clobbered with as a consequence of that is complete anathema to growth. I think on the left flank of the party, as I said, most definitely, I am really sick of hearing that she has a social mobility story, that the kind of hair shirt politics can only go so far. Lots of people from very difficult backgrounds, and it is admirable that she has you know, made so much of herself. But you know, the electorate only take that so far. Then you have to prove yourself. And when you're in a situation where you owe £40,000 because of some misunderstanding, quote unquote, about your property taxes. The other thing that I would say about this story, or this little sort of nib in the Metro, is that it really annoys me the way that Starmer and many others talk about the criticism levelled at Angela Rayner and Rachel Reeves as an expression of misogyny. And I'm saying this as a woman. You know, there is misogyny, there is horrible discrimination against women in all areas of public life, I agree, and all areas of working life, I agree with you. But we also have to recognise that sometimes people are just not very good at their jobs. And when they're not good at their jobs, you can't hide behind an argument of misogyny to say, well, actually, Rachel Reeves just delivered an awful budget.
Do you think there is no misogyny whatsoever at play?
I think it's you know, it's not as, I don't think it's a zero-sum game. I think there will be those who practice that nefarious kind of approach, and there are those for who are simply saying you're not very good at what you do. And as a woman, I loathe the idea of quota politics, and you know, the idea of we want so many numbers of women. I want it to be a meritocracy. I think we need to teach our daughters meritocracy too.
OK, Andrew and Kevin, thank you very much for the moment. Coming up, employers will soon be legally obliged to remind staff of their right to join a union. We'll be discussing that next. Do stay with us.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
An enormous explosion that's just come down. I think it was a monster that's just landed in between us.
Hundreds and hundreds of people hoping to get north, ultimately to get to the United States.
It's a border where they're not welcome, yet they keep coming.
We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people, taking them out and putting them into trucks and taking them away.
They make about 50 kilos of fentanyl a week.
It's incredibly dangerous and toxic stuff.
There's been an upsurge in deaths. The fighting between the gangs is getting more and more vicious.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah.
The battlefield is outside the barricades, which is over there. This is much more like a normal town. It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change. We're being crushed.
Free from wherever you get your news.
We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. This is real, hardcore emergency medicine.
The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world.
Sky News, the full story first. Hundreds of thousands of people have been using the beast for years to traverse Mexico, but it is really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off.
And make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
You are watching the press preview, still with me, Kevin McKeever and Angela Epstein. Let us take a look at the Times front page and this story regarding unions. The state will encourage all staff to join a union. Compulsory advice in workers' rights package. Angela.
Well, this is very interesting, said no one ever. No, seriously, it is interesting because it is quite polarising, because just as much as having the right to join a workplace, to join a union, should have the right not to. This story has been written about the fact that everyone in Britain will be required to hand staff pro-union messaging, written by Whitehall. This is a proposed overhaul of workers' rights. My concern about this story is that if you are sort of compelled to join a union, does that then therefore mean you are compelled to strike? And does it then get you into difficult territory when you may not agree with the notion of striking if your union, you know...
But it's not compelling people to join a union. Well, it's just giving them the information, though, isn't it?
Yes, but it's... OK, you're right. But it's encouraging them, and it's sort of making that conversation far more prominent. Now, obviously, the unions over history have done very important work in terms of protecting rights. But when they become excessively militant, then there is a danger. And I think you don't want to have a culture in the workplace where, because it's become such a prominent conversation, it's like, well, are you joining the union? Have you joined? It should be a very private thing, I think.
Oh, there's nothing that prevents militancy in trade unions more than mass membership. I think it's a great idea. You know, people should be given straightforward information to say, you know, this is what a union does. It protects your rights, can represent you to your employer, and you have an option whether or not to join. I think it's a wonderful idea. It should have been done sooner.
Going to agree on that. Interesting that Gary Smith, General Secretary of the J&B Union, says that the least every worker should expect is to be told about their legal right. It's a simple case of honesty and transparency, and it's never a problem for a good employer.
No, but then you think about, for example, the doctor strike you know, the recurring nature of the doctor strike. I'm a great believer that doctors should be paid, you know, what they are worth. They study for years. They have a very, very important role. And yes, we should be giving them what they can. But I think they're taking the mickey now in terms of this next round of strikes, just before Christmas, just before the fact that the NHS is going to be severely under the cosh. We know from the chief exec of the NHS that we're facing one of the worst flu seasons in the coming weeks. And that's when the notion of unions becomes a little bit toxic, because I know doctors who are torn between recognising the right to strike and the fact that they feel the conversation has gone too far.
But do you not think that it's people's right to be told that there is a union available should you want to join it?
Yeah, I think there's a difference between being told, here's your information, and being encouraged to join that union. I think that's the critical part.
So why is this encouraging? Why do you think this is encouraging?
Because I'm going by the headlines, the state will encourage all staff to join union. So the very idea, as opposed to state will encourage all workplaces to inform their employees about a union, is quite different from the idea of gently nudging them towards taking part. I'll give you this one. I do accept the point that, you know, larger numbers therefore dilute the militancy, but equally people have to feel that they are not being driven into a situation that they're uncomfortable
I think
with.
we should trust people to make a choice. I mean, you a member of a trade union? I am. I don't feel compelled. I'd happily explain to others the benefits.
Well, I'm a freelancer now, but in my early days I was a member of the NHS.
There we go, yeah. All trade unions together.
OK, let's look at the FT. Hollywood fears $83 billion Netflix-Warner deal would trigger fresh wave of job cuts. This hasn't gone through as yet. It's still to be approved, but it would make Netflix a giant in the industry. Kevin?
Yes, so I think the story broke at the end of last week about this mega deal for Netflix to take over Warner, which includes the HBO brands and others. But there's been some concerns, kind of day one, day two concerns, that what's this going to mean for jobs? It's going to, if you have this level of takeover and merger, the company, Netflix, is going to be looking at getting not just market share, but of course getting some cost synergies. And the Screen Actors Guild, the union, for actors and screenwriters in Hollywood, which is fascinatingly is spokesperson Jane Fonda, which I thought was actually the most interesting part of the piece, has said that actually they are very concerned. They've called on the deal to be blocked on the basis of what it means for jobs. I think we're going to see more of this. I think we're going to see more of this in Europe as well. Of course, this deal has to go through not just US regulators, but also European ones too. And that's before we even look at what it means for the consumer and their access, yes, to great content, but also what they're going to pay as well. I think there's a lot to run on this.
Yes.
A lot of interesting parties.
I'm amazed there isn't a kind of monopolies issue here. Because
yes, there isn't an antitrust,
you're dealing with these huge organisations who deliver entertainment in very different ways. Because we now have a streaming culture. You know, the conversation is what box sets are you watching or what are you seeing? The idea of going to the cinema, you know, is becoming less and less of a routine thing. And we were talking before we came out about the fact that some things will whiz into the cinema before they go onto Netflix if the deal goes ahead, so that they can then be considered for the Oscars. But actually, which is quite schematic. But then it takes away the pleasure of waiting for something to, you know, and watching it at the cinema.
We've just got 10 seconds to show Lando Norris, just because it's fantastic. Picture. But we haven't got time to talk about it, but there he is, holding up the trophy.
Lando, hope and glory. What a wonderful young man.
Yeah.
What fantastic to see.
Brilliant headline as well. See you both in the 11. Thank you so much.